What's going on, everybody out in YouTube land, and welcome back to a new episode of GBA. I'm sure you can tell by the title of this video that today I'm going to be talking about the Aladdin Deck Enhancer attachment for the NES. So basically what prompted me to make this video is over the last few, months or so, I've been actually reading up a lot about this add-on that was being released for the NES and some of the games and the company that was involved with it. And I just thought that it was super interesting, and I'm sure a lot of you guys know from watching my videos, I am going for a complete NES set. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going for all of the unlicensed games, but I felt like this was a piece that I definitely wanted in the collection, and I also wanted to pick up the all the games that were released for it, because there is not very many of them. So in this video I'm going to show you the Aladdin Deck Enhancer, and then I'm going to go ahead and show you all of the games that were released for it. I'll probably give you a brief little rundown of what my experiences are with the games that came out for this system. And I also got my iPad here. I did write down several little bullet points that I wanted to talk about in this video. This is by no means going to be a full in-depth history of this system, or the games for that matter. But I urge you guys, if you want to learn more about this, Google it, look up the Wikipedia and some of the other videos about this online, because it is quite interesting, and I'm not going to do it a whole lot of justice. I just want to kind of talk about my experiences and why I picked it up. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and show you the Aladdin Deck Enhancer, and then I'll show you the games that were for it, and then we'll go on with the rest of the video. So first up, let's go ahead and show you the Aladdin Deck Enhancer itself. So yeah, and I want to point out that this is sealed, and all of my games are actually sealed as well. So I won't be opening any of this up in the video, unfortunately, because I'm not really planning on using this stuff, so I might as well just keep it sealed. My experiences with these games were through emulation, which all of you guys could do that as well. So if you do want to play any of these games, I suggest looking them up online and trying them out, because some of them are quite fun, to be honest. But here's the back of the box for the Aladdin Deck Enhancer. And just once again, the front there. Alright, so next up, the games. So first up, we had two of the Camerico Quattro Sports cartridge here, and the Quattro Adventure cartridge here. So basically these were cartridges that were released with 4 games on them. And I know when Camerico was releasing standalone unlicensed games, these were a big part of their focus and a part of their advertisements. So first up, you have the Aladdin Deck Enhancer cartridge of the 4 Quattro Sports. Here's the back of that. So you have the cartridge for the 4 Quattro Adventure. Alright, so next up, you have Micro Machines. Alright, so next up you've got The Fantastic Adventures of Dizzy. So just as a side note, this is probably my favorite game on the Aladdin Deck Enhancer. It's very, very fun, like a puzzle, adventure, platformer type game. So next up we have Big Nose Freaks Out. And last but not least, the last standalone game that was going to be released with the Aladdin Deck Enhancer, we have Linus the cosmetic Spacehead's The Cosmetic Crusade. That's a mouthful, that's for sure. And just as a side note, this Linus game was probably the game I had the least amount of fun with. Once again, this is like a platformer game, adventure platformer, but what really hampered this game a lot was the controls. Also, some of the mechanics in this game I really did not like. So yeah, guys, so those are basically the 6 standalone games that were released for the Aladdin Deck Enhancer. And the Aladdin Deck Enhancer itself came with Dizzy the Adventurer cartridge in it. So the Deck Enhancer itself actually came with a game. So in total, there was only 7 games for the Aladdin Deck Enhancer. Now, from the little bit of research that I did, I do know that Comerica was planning on releasing a further 35 titles or so for the Aladdin add-on, but obviously, as you're going to find out in this video, they never got to that point. So yeah, guys, a little bit of backstory on the Aladdin Deck Enhancer itself. So the system was, or the add-on, I keep on calling it a system, but it's basically just an add-on for the NES. It was released by Comerica in 1993, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are already going to realize that was 2 years after the Super NES released. So basically, I guess Comerica's plan was to latch onto those 30 million people who bought an NES that did, and I guess they were hedging on the bets that a lot of those people did not want to go out and buy a new Super Nintendo. So basically what they were going to do is they were going to basically release this Aladdin Deck Enhancer, which offered supposedly better games with better graphics and bigger games on the NES for a lot cheaper than the standard NES carts costed. So basically, like I said, they promised in a lot of their marketing for it that they were going to give you bigger, better games, but we would later find out that all of that was kind of just a ploy by Comerica to kind of sell the system itself. But like I said, the one benefit that the Aladdin Deck Enhancer was going to have is that once you had that, the cartridges themselves were going to be really cheap. I think I read somewhere that a lot of them were going to be around the $17 to $19 price point, which I'm sure a lot of you guys know that's a lot cheaper than a standard game. At the time, I want to say NES carts and Super Nintendo games and stuff were ranging somewhere between the $40 and $50 range. I can't be for sure about that because obviously 1993, 94 was a long time ago. But one of the weirdest things about this is the games that they were going to release with this Aladdin Deck Enhancer, almost every single one of them were already standalone NES unlicensed carts that were released by Comerica. So pretty much all these games you could already play on the NES as standalone carts. I think that was definitely going to be one of the issues that they had when they released this to market. Now, like I said, they were planning on putting out a bunch more games, but how would this have sold when it first came out, when literally every single game you could buy outside of the system was already released? So I feel like that was a pretty big mishap for the company if they were actually to release this add-on, and they probably wouldn't have been successful with it. But basically what the Aladdin Deck Enhancer is it's basically just kind of like an extension of the cartridge itself. So basically what it is a lot of the chips that would be inside of an NES cart, they instead put those chips inside of the Deck Enhancer. So in turn, the actual cartridges that you're buying, all they had on them was the game ROMs. So that's how they were basically going to advertise these games a lot cheaper than a standard NES cart. Because when developers went to release a game, they wouldn't have to put all of those extra chips into the cartridge themselves. All they would have to put in there is the game ROM, because the Aladdin Deck Enhancer, which is plugged into your Nintendo, would have all those extra chips on them already. So that's kind of where they were getting to the cheaper price points. So in turn, you weren't really getting anything extra like they were advertising, because they were advertising extra memory and different things like that so you could have bigger games with better graphics. You weren't really getting that though. It was literally when you had the Aladdin cartridge into the deck enhancer, it was basically just a standard Camerico cart. That was it. It was just a way for them to get around having the games cost so much money. They were trying to improve their profit margins, basically. So yeah, there was only 7 total games for the system. Like I said, you had the one pack-in game, and then 6 games that were going to be for sale separately. And like I said earlier in the video, they did plan on releasing about 35 within that first calendar year. So less than a year after announcing the Aladdin deck enhancer, Camerica actually filed for bankruptcy. So it's really kind of unknown if this add-on was ever actually released to the public as far as being sold in stores. There really isn't no hard proof out there. I looked online and I didn't see anything for advertisements for this and catalogs or anything like that. So there's a lot of rumors out there that this was never actually even released to the public. But I'm going to tell you, a lot of these that you will find for sale are still sealed, the games and the add-on system itself. So that would actually constitute maybe that this wasn't released to the public. And if any of you guys are wondering, how are we getting our hands on these Aladdin deck enhancers and these games if they were not released to the public? Well, basically, when Camerico filed for bankruptcy, all their assets got liquidated. So basically, from what I was reading online, a couple years after the bankruptcy was filed, there was a video game store that went in and purchased a lot of the assets from Camerica. Basically a lot of their back inventory and different things like that. So I guess with that back inventory, they found a bunch of these Aladdin deck enhancers. I want to say thousands of them. And just like the deck enhancers, there was thousands of the games with the deck enhancers themselves. So from what I understand, a couple years after that bankruptcy, that's when a lot of these made their way into the wild. And I do know that I read somewhere that even after that initial purchase of those assets, other distributors got their hands on more of these and started releasing them. So it's really kind of unknown how many of these there are out there, but it's safe to say there's more than 10,000 of them. And I personally got mine on eBay. If you go on eBay and search for the Aladdin deck enhancer in the games, you will see plenty of them pop up. You'll find some of them that are used and opened, and then you'll find a lot of them that are brand new as well. And these things are not that expensive. So if you are an NES collector and you're interested in this, now's the time to go ahead and buy one of these. I know that I purchased all of these brand new, the 6 games and the deck enhancer, brand new for less than $100, and that was shipped to the house. So to me, that's just an awesome piece of history to have in this collection, especially since I love the NES so much. And when I was a kid, I never actually even heard about this thing. So it's definitely something that I'm going to value in my collection, and I'll display it proudly with the rest of my NES stuff. But yeah, so I just actually picked this stuff up recently, and I wanted to make a quick video just kind of telling you guys some of the history behind it and basically what it was meant to do and how you were meant to use it. And, you know, that's kind of why I bought it. It's just a piece of history that I wanted to preserve in my collection. But like I said, guys, if you want to, go read up on this thing. It's quite interesting, and I'm really doing it no justice. I just wanted to talk about a couple bullet points that I had. So now let me talk about some of my experiences with the actual games themselves really quick. Like I said, Linus Spacehead's Cosmic Crusade, it's basically a platforming game with bad controls and bad mechanics, and this was probably the least of my least favorite of the games that I played. But I did like the graphic style in this game. It was colorful, if that means anything to you, and your experience may vary, so definitely give it a try yourself. So, Big Nose Freaks Out. This is actually another platforming game, but this one's a little bit different because you're basically rolling around on a wheel in this game. So, it's kind of weird to control, and, you know, a lot of it's physics-based and getting speed runs up and jumping over things, and jumping off ledges and stuff like that. It's not a bad game by any means, but it's not one of my favorite games that I played that came out for the Aladdin Deck Enhancer. If you do want to play a big nose game, Comerica released the first game in this series, Big Nose Caveman or something like that, as an unlicensed NES cart. That one is a whole lot more fun than this game. This is actually the second, the sequel to that game or whatnot. But Big Nose Freaks Out, you could do a lot worse, but it's not great. So like I said before, The Fantastic Adventures of Dizzy is probably one of my favorite games on this Aladdin Deck Enhancer. This game right here is a puzzle adventure platformer, and it is very fun to play through this game. You have to have certain items to get past certain parts of the game, and it's pretty fun figuring out exactly what you have to do. This game is a pretty big game as well, so it does take a little bit of time to get through it. But like I said, you will have fun with this. It's got a good pace to it, the characters are fun, and the graphics look really good. So yeah, I definitely suggest playing this one, even if it's just on an emulator. So probably Comerica's most famous game that they released is the Micro Machines game. And I mean, obviously that's pretty much because of the license they had with this game, because who didn't like Micro Machines back in the early 90s, late 80s? But this is basically just a top-down racing game, and it's fun. I mean, especially if you like games like, like the original Wave Race on Game Boy, or something like RC Pro-Am, Ivan Stewart's Off-Road, stuff like that, you will like Micro Machines. And it's kind of a fun collecting nature in this game, because when you win races, you can collect new Micro Machines. So I would definitely suggest giving this one a try. The graphics look nice, the gameplay is tight, and Micro Machines is a fun game. So now for the games that Comerica really got behind when they were releasing their unreleased carts on the NES, the 4 Quattro series. The sports games are terrible. I really can't tell you I liked any of these. The BMX simulator might be my favorite one because it's a top-down racing game, but even that one was pretty hard. The baseball game sucks, the soccer game is terrible, and the tennis game has really bad mechanics, so I do not suggest this one at all. This is not fun. So last up is the 4 Quattro Adventure series. This one's a lot different than this 4-pack, because this one actually has some good stuff on it, and I do suggest playing around with this game. It's quite fun. Boomerang Kid, it's okay, nothing super special, but you could do a lot worse. Super Robin Hood is really fun. You go around in dungeons. It's like a platforming puzzle type game, but Super Robin Hood is fun. There's another Dizzy game on here. I think it's Treasure Island. Yeah, Dizzy Treasure Island. It's a fun Dizzy game. It's not quite as good as the other standalone game that I was talking about, but it's okay. I actually suggest playing all the Dizzy games. I do know, outside of the Aladdin Deck Enhancer, they released a lot of those Dizzy games other places as well. I want to say there's roughly 14 Dizzy games out there or something like that, and they were kind of using that as a mascot for a little while. But definitely give that one a try. And Linus Spaceheads, or Spacehead, whatever it is, like the other game, this one has some control issues and stuff like that. So out of the 4, that's the one I would stay away from the most on this. But overall, this is not a bad little set of games here. So yeah, guys, those are the 6 standalone games. And I do want to mention real quick the Dizzy the Adventurer game that was a pack-in game with the Deck Enhancer. Once again, that is a fun Dizzy game as well. It's not nowhere near as long, but it stays in the same vein as kind of like an adventure platformer game. But, not bad at all. But like I said, guys, so that right there is the Aladdin Deck Enhancer. Pretty neat little footprint in the history of video games. And like I said, releasing this a couple years after the Super Nintendo probably wouldn't have been a good idea, even if this did make it to market. But like I said, with Comerica going bankrupt, this really had no chance whatsoever. But yeah, so definitely, guys, I want to say thank you so much for watching this episode of GBA. If you're interested, go online and read about this. It is an awesome little piece of history, and like I said, I probably do it no justice whatsoever, but nonetheless, I want to say thank you so much for tuning into this episode of GBA. Guys, I think I'm going to end this video here. I'm probably going to go open up some boxes, maybe play some games, try to enjoy the rest of my evening. I hope you do too. So until next time, guys, I'll see you later.